Welcome to the Elliott School of International Affairs, our online faculty panel this evening. My name is Nicole Campbell. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions here for the Elliott School. I'm so happy to have you all here virtually, and I again want to congratulate you all on your admission to the Elliott School. Tonight, we have four wonderful faculty panelists with us, and before I introduce them, I want to quickly thank you all for tuning in. I want to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe given our global pandemic going on right now. So we hope you and your families are healthy and safe right now. And we're so happy that you were able to join us tonight. I want to provide a quick overview for how the session is going to run and give some instructions for our attendees this evening. First, please make sure that your microphones are muted at all times. We want to make sure that you can hear our panelists and that there's no background noises or interruptions. I've set the session up so that it's muting you when you come in, but just make sure that if you're looking at the panelist list on the right-hand side, you'll see a red microphone with a slash through it. Or if you hover under my video feed right here on the horizontal toolbar, you'll see that there's a video camera with a red slash there as well, and a microphone slash as well. And that will make sure that you have both your microphone and your video camera off. That way you can see all of our panelists' delightful faces this evening. The other thing is I want to make sure that if you have questions that you're typing them into the chat box, which is located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you don't see that, if you hover over the toolbar at the bottom of the video feed, you'll see a little chat bubble and you can click on that. And there you'll find the space for you to type your questions into the chat box. Make sure that you're addressing them to everyone, and that way other attendees can also see other questions that have already been asked. And then lastly, we are recording this session, so if you have any interest in getting a copy of the recording, you can email us at esiagrad@gwu.edu, and we'll be sending this out to all of the participants later as well. Lastly, I just want to talk about timing. This event will run until 7 p.m. on the dot. And so when we get about 5 minutes from the end, I'll pose a final question to our panelists. And if there's a question that you've put in the chat box that we haven't gotten to, you can always email those to us at esiagrad@gwu.edu. And then we'll make sure to address those questions by email or connect you with one of our panelists as well. Okay, so now I'm happy to introduce our faculty panelists. I have four that I'm going to introduce here, and while I'm introducing them, go ahead and start putting your questions into the chat box, and that way we'll be able to start asking some of those questions right after I'm done reading all of our introductions. I'm going to start with Dr. Jisoo Kim, who serves as the director of the GW Institute for Korea Studies, Korea Foundation Associate Professor of History, International Affairs, and East Asian Languages and Literatures. Dr. Kim is a specialist in gender and legal history of early modern Korea. Her broader research interests include crime and justice, forensic medicine, history of emotions, literary representations of the law, diglossia, vernacular, and gender and sexuality. Her first book, The Emotions of Justice, Gender, Status, and Legal Performance in Chosun Korea, which received the 2017 James B. Pillay Book Prize, traces the discourse of emotions in the realm of law and examines how the narrative of won, or the sense of being wronged, play a crucial role in seeking and performing justice. She's currently working on a book project tentatively titled Crime of Violence, Forensic Medicine, Dead Bodies, and Legal Emotions in Early Modern Korea. That's Dr. Jisoo Kim. Now I'll introduce Dr. Leila Sorobash. She serves as our Assistant Professor, Associate Director for our MIPP Online program and is currently the Acting Director of our online education for the Elliott School. She received her PhD in political science from the University of Houston with specializations in comparative politics, American politics, and quantitative methods. Her dissertation, entitled Feedback in the EU Advocacy System, studies how institutional, environmental, and structural changes to the European Union have impacted interest group populations via their levels of competitiveness and survivability. She's published works in European political science and interest groups and advocacy, and recently received the new faculty research grant to conduct interviews in Brussels, Belgium, regarding interest groups and biofuel policy. Prior to joining the Elliott School at GW, She held faculty and leadership positions at the University of West Los Angeles, the University of Houston, the University of Missouri-Columbia, American University, and the University of Houston downtown. Welcome, Dr. Sauerbush. Dr. James Foster is the the Oliver T. Carr Professor of International Affairs and Professor of Economics. He received his PhD in economics from Cornell University and holds a doctorate honoris causa from Universidad Autónoma del Estado de Hidalgo in Mexico. His research focuses on welfare economics, using economic tools to evaluate and enhance the well-being of people. His joint 1984 Econometrica paper is one of the most cited papers on poverty. It introduced the FGT index, which has been used in thousands of studies and was employed in targeting the Progressive CCT program in Mexico. His other research includes work on economic inequality, on the distribution of human development, on multidimensional poverty, and on literacy. He regularly teaches introductory and doctoral courses on international development, and each spring presents an undergraduate course on game theory and strategic thinking, to which staff and board members of the World Bank are also invited. He's also a research fellow at the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, Department of International Development, Oxford University, and a member of the Human Capital and Economic Opportunity Working Group, Becker Friedman Institute for Research and Economics, University of Chicago. This year, he's serving on the World Bank's Commission on Global Poverty. Well, you all are giving me such a great mouthful. Welcome, Dr. Foster. And Dr. Paul Williams is a professor of international affairs and associate director of the Security Policy MA program. Between 2012 and 2018, Dr. Williams was a non-resident senior advisor at the International Peace Institute in New York. During 2014 to 2015, he was a visiting fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center for International Scholars. And during 2015 to 2017, he was a global fellow associated with the center's Africa program. From 2011 to 2014, Dr. Williams worked as a visiting professor at the Institute for Peace and Security Studies at Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia. He previously taught at the universities for, oh my gosh, Aberystwyth. I know you're going to correct me, Dr. Williams. Birmingham and Warwick in the United Kingdom, and has been a visiting scholar at Georgetown University and the University of Queensland, Australia. He's also managing the Providing for Peacekeeping Project, an independent research project which analyzes how to develop more effective United Nations peacekeeping operations. Welcome, Dr. Williams, and welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm now going to turn it over to our Q&A portion. I am hoping that we'll have some questions entered into our Q&A space, but I'm going to start by posing a question to the panel just to kick us off while some questions roll in. This first question is just, what do you think, or why do you think the study of international affairs is so important, especially during this time right now in the world? And I'll let anyone take that question who wants to start.
I don't mind jumping in if no one else does. Can you hear me, Nicole?
Yep, I can hear you, Dr. Williams. Go ahead.
So for me, the study of international relations at base is to tell the world about the world. And I think sitting here in our isolated, hunkering down sort of COVID-19 response mode, I think you couldn't simply ask for anything more important than that, right? The job of international affairs students is to study the world so that we can tell ourselves about the world honestly, objectively, with all the warts and sort of prejudices that go with it. But in that sense, I think it really is a discipline for potentially humanity, and the time that we're in now in the 21st century is a time to think internationally, to think transnationally, to think in a networked fashion about the big sort of systemic challenges we're going to be facing. I think we can see now that no matter what passport you carry, it's not going to save you when you're dealing with the systemic and transnational risks that we're facing. So whether you're talking about disease and pandemics like COVID-19, or you're talking about climate change, or you're talking about a whole range of other issues on the security agenda, for me, international affairs is a good place to start trying to figure these things out.
Thank you.
I'll also chime in here. So I actually think that this is a really nice topic to study in Elliott School's International Affairs, in particular for two reasons. One reason is we tend to also kind of look at international affairs in a comparative way. So asking ourselves, are we handling this pandemic in the best possible way? Are there any other country contexts that we could sort of look to see if maybe they have a model that might be better, that we would, want to prefer in terms of our scope of action. And the second thing that we tend to do at the Elliott School is that we tend to sort of take these types of problems and we think of them as complex problems or wicked problems. And when we sort of classify them under this realm, essentially what we're saying is there's no simple solution to this problem. And I think that the global pandemic is definitely one of those situations where, you have sort of this healthcare issue at its core, but then there's multiple layers under that. And so if you are approaching a solution or coming up with a solution to this problem, it's sort of important to take a look at the problem holistically and sort of envision and come up with policies that address the issue from multiple different facets and multiple different perspectives. So definitely sort of thinking of a global approach is one of the best ways of sort of taking this problem holistically.
James, do you want to go first?
So go ahead.
So I totally agree with what's been said by Paul and Layla. So one thing that I would like to just add is, recently we've been talking a lot about already, post-pandemic era, like what it's going to look like. And, we always talk about new normal life, right? So what is that new normal life is gonna look like? And I think this COVID-19 not only raises issues in terms of international security, but also and along with that, of course, healthcare issues, but also there's been a lot of discussions about racism, cultural differences, and the way in which each, like different countries handle these issues. For example, even wearing masks at the beginning, people say it was Asian thing, but then now it's, that's not necessarily the case, because even in Asia, they're talking about, wearing masks as based on scientific basis. And so, all these issues related to not, this international affairs is all intimately related to culture, race, and gender, and all this, again, talking about gender, we talk about domestic violence, increasing. And so all these, issues are interconnected, and there's just so many issues to explore right now, I think, in this time period.
Okay, so yes, international affairs. The multiple disciplines that lead into international affairs. It's just, you see things from all the different points of view where people study so deeply. From my point of view, it's economics, of course. But the fact is that I don't have all the answers. Many of the causes of our current problem are political in nature. And so I want to go to the people who know that, to understand best where the problems are coming from and how they can be solved. Likewise, the healthcare specialists will come to people like me and others who know about poverty and say, well, what is it that poverty is doing to amplify this situation, and what will be the impact ultimately on the poor who will be disproportionately affected by COVID-19? What can be the predicted effect, and how can we do the best we can to deal with that before it happens? So a School of International Affairs is where many different disciplines meet to solve real world problems.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was great. We have our first question in our chat box. In selecting a region or country of the world to select as a concentration, what are the trade-offs or criteria to consider if someone is equally interested or motivated in 2 or 3 areas or countries of the world. Some examples they give is an interest in Southeast Asia versus Latin America versus Russia and Eastern Europe.
I can start with that one again from a security program perspective, and I'd start by saying there's really no right or wrong answer here, but you're right to frame it as one of trade-offs. And the way I'd see it here is, on the one hand, think about your potential peers or competitors. If you go down the sort of the route of choosing one particular region as your specialism, think very carefully about the other people who are likely to be doing the same thing. And what experience do you have that's relevant to really making you stand out in the study of that region? Have you spent time there? Do you speak one or more relevant languages in that region? Can you talk sensibly about it, from practical experience as well as from academia? And if you can't, or if you're sort of wobbly on those areas, then I think, a couple of years in MA is not going to turn you necessarily into a regional expert. In which case, I think looking at the issues sort of thematically rather than regionally, you can start thinking about themes that are salient across a range of different issues. So I noticed you listed up there, if we think about in the security realm, for example, issues like energy security or cyber security or water security, these can play out and be important in many different regions around the world. But they would give you a sort of, thinking of a resume here or your professional sort of career in mind, being able to talk sensibly about issues that resonate in that region might be the better way to go. And that would put you in sort of a different pool of jobs and potential peers who might be competing for those. But it's really a sort of no right or wrong answer. If you're 100% certain you want to dive into a particular region, make the best of it. But if not, I think sort of, as I've said, think thematically in a way that can bring sort of useful expertise to those regions.
Just to chime in, I think that that's actually really practical advice. And just one other thought when it comes to the thematic aspect, think carefully about what themes could be sort of applied in different contexts versus the ones that are sort of regionally focused or regionally specific. So if those themes sort of travel well, then that's something to consider about which regions you might be most interested in, and if that theme sort of fits broadly across those regions. If it is something that is regionally focused, then that would be your answer there. So if it's something that is a little bit more specific, then that, I think, narrows your choices a little bit more.
Great. Thank you both. Our next question has several different parts, but I'm going to take them maybe one question at a time. The first one is, what makes a successful student at the Elliott School? Maybe you all could speak to some characteristics that you've seen in some of your successful students and talk through kind of what are some qualities that would be valuable for a student.
Can I take this one first?
Yes, of course.
So I've noticed with my students, the ones who are approaching their classes and approaching their projects and approaching their assignments with a genuine interest and a genuine passion tend to really perform well. The students who in their classes with me, if their questions are mainly focused on when is the due date, what's the page limit, sort of the technicalities around the assignment itself, but sort of missing the bigger picture as to what the assignment is supposed to serve, what purpose it's supposed to serve, those students tend to sort of not do as well. So this kind of goes back also, or speaks to the last question, in that you want to have a genuine interest, you want to have a genuine passion in your classes and in your program, and not look at it as, this is a checklist that I need to kind of, check off through the classes. So that bringing that, graduate school is just like any other endeavor in that you get what you put into it. And so the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And those are the students who tend to be quite successful.
So we're blessed at the school with an incredible group of students. You'd be surprised, the undergraduate students are amazing as well. They're outward looking, and the successful ones start with the real world. They see the problems that are out there, the interesting phenomena, and then they bring it into the classroom with them. And then they see what is in the classroom that can apply to that particular problem. And I've seen it again and again with my students. They just amaze me with the insights that they get and the motivation that they have to study what I'm teaching because of its impact in the real world and the ability to solve questions and problems and so forth. So I think the key thing about the Elliott School student is they often start looking outside and bring it in with them.
I totally agree. I mean, I think first of all, I think in any class, in order to do well, or not just in class, but also, you know, in whatever you do, I think having that, you know, passion whatever you're studying is really I think the most important thing. And then I think many students, Elliott School students that I have seen, I mean, they come in with really interest in this world, right? I mean, obviously this is an international affairs school, and they come in with, you know, a lot of interest, such so just, you know, for example, like in issues of human trafficking, gender policies, and, you know, these kind of issues. And then they, as Jane just mentioned, they also they definitely take advantage of the location as well, because they're in Washington, right? I mean, there are just so many places to go and explore, like think tanks and all these, you know, NGOs, institutes, and actually talk with experts. They intern, and so I think that really balances well in terms of what they're learning and gaining during their 2 years of Elliott School. And also, in addition to that, they travel a lot, right? And then they also take advantage of this study abroad program. And so many of my students were also interested in North Korean human rights issues, and, you know, they had chances to go to Korea and actually, you know, talk with defectors and help them. And so there are a lot of, you know, actual experiences that they can gain based on what they're interested in. So I think not only is, you know, it's a great opportunity to study about international affairs, but also actually explore and, you know, really practice, be able to gain their knowledge and experiences and being prepared to go out in the real world.
I'll just end by adding briefly then, for me, two things that really make the successful students stand out once they get here. One is analytical thinking, and basically the ability to apply sort of critical and analytical thinking to the types of problems that I mentioned. And second for me is good writing skills. If you can write concisely, logically, marshal the evidence that you need to make a persuasive argument and defend it, you know, from potential criticisms, those two things for me, analytical thinking and good writing, really stand out as to what makes a you know, a good student coming out of this school.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is about mentorship. Do professors commonly serve as formal or informal mentors to students during their time as graduate students?
I can pick back up in the, again, just speaking for the Security Policy Studies program. So we have about 200 MA students in SPS at the moment. And myself and Professor Sotomayor are the program director and associate director. So we'll mentor all of our students. We basically divvy it up roughly 50-50. And every student in their first few weeks of their first semester will have a one-on-one meeting with myself or Professor Sotomayor, where for about half an hour, we talk you through your plan of study, what are the right selection of courses for you to pick. And then generally from there, you sort of stick with who you've started with, unless you have a good intellectual reason for swapping over. So if you develop an interest in organized crime in Latin America, it's better for you to talk to Arturo and less useful for you to talk to me, but, you know, vice versa. So that's how we work it. And then informally, have a range of about probably, I mean, maybe 40 or so full-time and part-time faculty that work with the SPS program, and they will be on call basically to help students in and around their courses in terms of the sort of professional mentorship and other things.
The same is also true for the MIPP program, which is our mid-career professionals program. We also meet with our students and do a plan of study. And also our most of our faculty are also practitioners, and so they have a lot of expertise in the field and are always willing to sit down with students and sort of coach them and navigate them through the next step. So we tend to recognize that our students who are coming at the mid-career level are either wanting to sort of take their careers to the next level or receive new training to sort of jump into an entirely different field. So our whole program is sort of focused on mentoring and training and sort of preparing for those types of switches. But networking is also a really major part of our program as well. So that's where most of our mentorship comes from.
I'll just mention one example. I mean, we've covered the institutional mentorship, but random events. You meet someone and then you begin the discussion. I met a student in the IDS program and discovered that we had lots of interests in common. And before long, we had an event at the UN, at the General Assembly, on some of the work that I've been doing on multidimensional poverty. I said, how would you like to be invited? So he came along. He helped set up the event, He met all the heads of state that were involved. And he said, I've actually done this before with Turkey. I said, well, that's really interesting. He's a Turkish student. And so the kind of the events that take place without intention just occur because you meet someone and then it happens. It's pretty amazing to see what can happen in the Elliott School along those lines.
There's a program director, Asian Studies Program Director, Dr. Greg Brzezinski. He may be able to talk more about this, for Asian Studies program students. But what I would like to mention is that for of course, Asian studies, regionally we cover East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and also, there are also faculty members doing Central Asia as well. So, regionally speaking, students will all have faculty members to turn to, regardless of their, regional interest. And also, we don't only just mentor Asian Studies program students, but also, for example, I've been also talking a lot with students, in conflict resolution or other students majoring other areas. And so, if you are interested in, whoever's work it is, just go out and reach out to them, and I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you. And I would also like to add on to what James has been saying, I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of all the events taking place in the Elliott School. There are just so many great events, and a lot of experts and renowned people come to GW to give talks. And so this is really a great place to network. Just attend those events and then just get their, emails and then, build your relationship. And it's really a great way to do that. And I always tell all of my students to do so. So I know when you come here, you may be busy studying and, at first year, not many students tend to attend these events, but I would highly encourage you to come to all these, great events that you find to be helpful.
Thank you. So this next question is kind of about our current circumstances. If classes have to be online for fall 2020 and spring 2021, will that impact the experience of a first-year grad student? And I'd like Dr. Sourabash to maybe start first, especially as she has been spearheading our Flex Start program for this fall. And then anyone else who wants to kind of speak to their experience about kind of how programs have gone online so far this spring and any other experience that y'all have had with it.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole, for the shout out. My program, the MIPP program, prior to this semester, we were the only graduate program that was fully online at the Elliott School. And what made our program so successful is that we're based on a face-to-face program. So essentially it's a program that has, full flexibility for students who want to take courses on campus, but also students who want to take online courses. And what makes our sort of model so successful is a couple of different things. First of all, you're getting the exact same experience online that you would be getting face-to-face, because it would be the exact same professor, exact same syllabus, exact same materials, et cetera, et cetera. So all of the things that go into creating a high quality course, in a face-to-face setting would also translate online. We also work with these people called instructional designers who have an extensive background in trying to mimic as closely as possible the face-to-face sort of experience as a student in an online format. So what that means is hosting live sync sessions once a week, doing discussion board posts, hosting group projects, having breakout sessions, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these different types of elements are built into the online platform and into the online experience. And in our evaluations of our program, comparing the student evaluations and the student experiences of those who were taking the exact same class, but one face-to-face and one online, almost every single time the online student ranked their course experience higher than the face-to-face section. And the reason is, I also love to teach face-to-face as well. The reason is online, particularly if it's well thought out, particularly if it's innovative, it's creative, there's a lot more that you can do online that sometimes is limited in a face-to-face setting. So, essentially you have the world at your fingertips whenever you're sort of putting the class online. So we are working with all of the different program directors to offer really high quality courses for the fall in case we have to be moved online. And so that includes, working with professors and working with faculty, hosting different workshops to make sure that some of those elements are all put together into the online experience. Spring was a little challenging, obviously, because the move had to be made and faculty had to convert their courses very, very quickly. And knock on wood, they've been getting great reviews from their students, even for simply the Herculean task that they had to take on. But summer and fall are going to be a little bit different since they've had already a little bit of training. So we can build in a couple more layers that will really enhance that online experience. One last thought before I turn it over. One of the primary fears, I think, for the online setting is that sometimes students feel like they might not be getting the full GW experience. And that's something that we have also built into our classes. So because we have such a strong relationship with each and every one of our students, my students in particular, I know everything about, their stories, their personal lives, etc. The online setting allows for a lot of flexibility. So, for example, one of my students is a brand new father, and so oftentimes in his classes, he's rocking his newborn, and I've met his wife, I've met his children. So it's really something that allows for a degree of personalization. And I was really tickled my first semester teaching in the online program. My students all within the first class shared their phone numbers, shared their email addresses, actually went out and made t-shirts. Don't tell our marketing director because they were not, the logo was not official, but went out and made t-shirts for the program, sent me one actually, so I was in on it too. And so they had this camaraderie And anytime they sort of go to each other's cities, they always visit each other and go out for drinks and send me pictures, etc. So there is still that Elliott feel, that school feel. And we are, of course, a brick and mortar university. So once this pandemic is all over, you guys are always welcome to come sit in, in our offices, meet us face to face, and get a sweatshirt.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sorfash. Oh, Dr. Foster, go ahead.
I could speak to that just briefly. About a month ago, when I realized the situation was going to go on longer than expected, I talked to members of the administration and said, we need to be flexible. We've got to be there for our students. So they have put in an incredible amount of effort, of course, Layla spearheading it, but an incredible amount of effort to make sure that no matter what happens, there is a there at the Elliott School for you. So bear that in mind, ask the questions to specific programs and follow up. I'm sure they'll come back to you again and again and say, yes, yes, we are working. It's going to happen. No matter what happens, we will be here. If the virus is here, we're online. If it is pushed aside, we're here in person. So we're flexible.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, our next question is about courses and their flexibility. Specifically, it says in the International Affairs program, this particular student is interested in security, and they take a couple security core classes while registered in the International Affairs program.
I can take that one, or first stab. So the short answer, I'm going to answer it negatively, basically. Most of the classes at the Elliott School are not hermetically sealed off, depending which MA program you're signed into. But where they are sometimes ring-fenced is precisely in a couple of the capstone and, in the cornerstone core classes. And International Affairs, MAIA, and Security Policy Studies are two good examples of that. So if you're registered to do the MA in International Affairs, you'll be taking the MAIA cornerstone to start off with. You won't therefore be able to take the core introductory class, International Security or Security Policy Analysis. But there are two good sort of caveats here. But number one is that actually about 40% of the International Affairs cornerstone is to do with issues of security and conflict. So you're getting a fair bit of the core security studies issues there if you sign up for the MA in International Affairs generally. And secondly, just because you can't do the two core SPS classes, we've got a whole bunch of other things that you can do. And I mean, I normally recommend students in IA that are interested in security and want sort of a little bit of the extra, but not, really niche stuff. The two big ones are probably transnational security and US national security, probably the two most popular. Transnational security will deal with all the non-state cross-border issues, networks like insurgents, criminals, terrorist organizations, smuggling and trafficking in humans, drugs, weapons, all that type of stuff. And then the process or non-state issues like pandemics and environmental and climate change issues. So transnational security is a great one to take if you're just going to take, a couple of extras. And then if you're interested in obviously the United States, and if it sneezes, who catches a cold sort of thing, a good course to take then is US national security, which looks at all those other issues I've just mentioned, but through the prism of what can the United States do about it and how might it respond. So those are the two that I would normally recommend people take.
Thank you. Okay, so we talked a little bit about mentorship. The question is about research opportunities and what do those look like? The question is, are we able to work with professors outside our individual program? We touched a little bit about connecting through events, but I wondered if anyone can speak a little bit more about kind of research or research institutes, anything like that.
So We have a research opportunity in the MIPP program. It's built into our core classes in strategy and leadership capstone. Essentially, the student will actually perform their own sort of research project based on their passion project. Something that I sort of mentioned before, and also echoed by the other professors, is that oftentimes students come in with an experience or something that they'd like to look into further. And so that develops into a year-long project for them, where at the end result of the course sequence, that can either turn into a grant proposal, an op-ed, or an advocacy piece. And actually several of our students have leveraged that into publications. But if there are other students who are looking for research opportunities, please reach out to me. I have a lot of projects that I'm working on, and I can definitely use your help.
Yeah, the short answer to that question is yes. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter which MA program you're signed up to, because the faculty sort of swap around and teach different courses that might be relevant to different areas. So no, it will just depend, as James has already mentioned, and Layla, on the personal relationships that you develop. We're not running sort of placement schemes here for research assistants. It will generally depend on a sort of much more ad hoc basis, which professors have got, research grants coming through that need research assistants work, and then they'll advertise accordingly, and you can't predict exactly when those things are going to come up, or what the precise niche is going to be that the professors are most looking for. But in my experience, it certainly wouldn't be just, oh, I'm only going to take SPS students and I wouldn't even consider others. It will all depend on the relevant sort of expertise and area concerned.
You can apply certainly research opportunities through classes or through your programs, but also, again, reach out to professors or also, different institutes, because, these institutes may have research opportunities. And like, for example, at the Institute for Korean Studies, there are professors who hire research assistants. And so, this is not always available, but there are. So depending on, availability, it is definitely worth trying, reaching out to professors to see, what research opportunities are available. So I would highly encourage, if it's difficult for you to, reach out to individual professors, then another way would be reaching out to, these institute directors, or whoever is related, in the whoever is related to the institute. Reach out to them and ask for research opportunities, because I'm sure there are tons of opportunities out there for you guys to explore.
I am an institute director, Institute for International Economic Policy. Is that loud enough, Nicole, by the way? Can you all hear me? Okay,
Yep,
sorry about that.
Thank you.
Good. And we often will hire quite a group of master's students in the Elliott School. For research, typically we have maybe 5, 10, 15 faculty who are doing research in any particular year, any particular time, and want to have research support. We provide the funds, they provide the good work. I should mention something else, that I've sent a number of my students and other people's students, the World Bank and the IMF. The fact is, we're 5 minutes away. That means you can be a consultant and actually work over there, earning, your money on 1 day a week, and being here in programs. Now, that is hard to do if it's a tough consultancy, but if it's an easy consultancy, it is very much synergistic with your coursework. It can be. So that is also a possibility that I've seen among students here in the Elliott School.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, this question is directed for you. Are there any correlations between course concentrations and career paths in the SPS program?
Okay, good question. So for those who may not know, the SPS MA program, we have 4 concentration areas. You can either choose to focus on US national security, transnational security, as I've just described, sort of dealing with the non-state set of issues. Conflict analysis and conflict resolution is the 3rd concentration. And then finally, science and technology. And so a concentration means you have to choose at least 15 credits worth of your 40 credit study, specializing in those particular areas. Do they then correlate with specific career paths and things? I'd say not so much, basically. The way I would encourage you to think about these things are not sort of rigid tracks or pigeonholes, if you like, but there's 2 elements to them. One is just bureaucratic, right? It's organizing intellectual pathways, and it's important bureaucratically that we understand roughly what our students want to concentrate on, because then we have to respond and deliver the courses that are necessary, right? So it's bureaucratically useful for us to get a sense of people's intellectual pathways and their interests so that we can then put on relevant types of courses. Secondly, though, in terms of career paths, I would encourage you to think of it more as sort of a way to build your own narrative about what exactly are the areas of security studies that you're building up expertise in. Because, I don't know, maybe if you talk to your mum or dad or siblings about international security, I'm getting an MA in international security issues, they'll probably have a mental image about probably guns and bombs will be up there front and center. They'll have a pretty clear mental image about what international security entails. If you talk to people probably more like yourselves who actually know a little bit more about it, you'll know that there's no way you can tell exactly what a person specializes in just from knowing the fact that they do international security or security policy, because there's such a broad range of issues. So it's really that second sense that we want you to try and link it to your career path. It's not a sort of a rigid pathway, but it's to build your own narrative and start thinking coherently from sort of day one, so that you can talk sensibly to potential employers, or if you're currently employed and you want to sort of advance in there, you can start telling those employers, what are the skill sets you're building specifically? What are the areas of expertise you're developing that are new? And those, I don't think they necessarily, open some career paths and close others. And if you look at the breakdown of SBS employment, we're putting people about a third into the public government sector, the sort of private world of security contractors, and then some of the non-profit think tank civil society groups. I don't think they're really split up according to which concentrations you've chosen. It's other issues that tend to determine those things.
Thank you. Please continue to put your questions into the chat box here. I do have a couple other questions for you all, though. One is just to talk about summer preparation and what do you all think students could be doing, maybe even journals or newspapers or blogs that you might recommend them subscribing to, but then other things that they could be doing over the summer to get prepared for classes in the fall.
I can actually send a couple of recommendations for some really nice introductory books, very short, if you want to do a little summer reading, just on research design, basic research design. What types of graduate writing skills are the ones that should be present and should be nurtured throughout your first semester. So I can send those along. I think those would be helpful just to kind of get an idea of the language of research, because it can be almost like exactly that, learning a new language. It's very different from writing an essay for an English class. So there's certain components to it, and there's a scientific element that's not necessarily natural when it comes to the way that we express ourselves as well. So there's a couple of resources that I can send, maybe Nicole, and then Nicole can distribute that.
I would just add to that specifically that on this question, we tend to get 2 types of students. There are those students that are already worked with an undergraduate degree or professional experience in the discipline of international affairs broadly. There are some people who are coming in that are really switching disciplines and have studied quite different stuff in their undergraduate or professional degrees. I'm certainly happy in the security field to say for those people that are swapping in to international security issues for the first time, there's a couple of key sort of books and other things I think you could usefully be reading over the summer, as Layla said, to get you into the language of the new sort of discipline and area that you're getting into. And yeah, I'd be happy to send specific recommendations if people want them.
And for those of you who will be taking economics or need to have enough economics background, my institute has offered for a couple of years training programs over the summer to help make that a smooth transition when you come here. And so have a look at that. Lisa Stevenson can tell you about it. Others can tell you about it as well. But I wanted to stop and just give a shout out to Sarah, who happens to be online. Hello, Sarah.
Can you hear me? Did it freeze? Hello?
Hello? Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, because I don't know, somehow on my screen, James froze. So I was just wondering whether you can hear me. All right. So for Asian Studies program students, I mean, again, I'd be happy to share reading lists for you guys. For Asian Studies program students, there are core classes that you need to take, and I'd be happy to share reading lists for that. But also, if you go to those of you who are interested in East Asia or Korea specifically, if you go to the Institute for Korean Studies website, there's a resource section. And if you click there, you'll see all sorts of resources available related to Korea/East Asia. So you're more than welcome to take advantage of that as well. Or I could send that link to Nicole, and then you can share it with students too.
Great, thank you. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? We've got some time here. We do have another question that came in. Great. Sorry, I have a dog. He has some feelings all of a sudden. I apologize. Building on the previous question about research opportunities, how would the Flex Start program or online classes impact students' access to research? So for example, are there online research assistantships that might be a possibility?
So obviously all of our research assistants now are online. So I jumped in there and just wanted to say, yes, that's a possibility. And it's just a matter of, stepping up on that side of things. We have it all prepared. And the only thing that we have to do is figure out how we're going to implement it at the beginning of next term. But as of right now, we have approximately 20 to 30 research assistants online working for professors as we speak.
I also wanted to mention that there's a grant proposal that I'm preparing that is the deadline is for August. And originally I had conceived of having the grant be able to fund 4 or 5 different positions for graduate assistants, and the research was to take place in the DC area, but because of all of the the circumstances with the pandemic, I'm now actually switching for the proposal to be able for the students to be able to actually work remotely. So one of the aspects of the proposal was to conduct interviews, and now those interviews could be done almost as in the same format remotely. So if that's something you guys are interested in, prior to the grant being accepted, if it's accepted, fingers crossed, then there's definitely opportunities for unfunded research, just in case you guys want to kind of get your feet wet with the research design process. But if it is funded, then those opportunities will be available most likely next summer, 2021, but also with a remote aspect to it.
Also talk about our more research opportunities at the Institute for Korean Studies. So we have policy programs, and we hire 1 to 2 research assistants every year. And so I don't know whether it's available. Wait, let me think. But anyways, next, I'm sure spring 2021 will be hiring but 2 research assistants who could help with our policy program, especially those of you interested in North Korea. I would highly encourage you to apply for that.
Thank you. This question again is also about research about, this might be a little specific. Are there research opportunities or teaching opportunities for security policy study students with native language skills in Ukrainian or Russian?
I can jump right in there. I just sent you a message in the chat function, Mariami, if I'm pronouncing your name right. The short answer is don't expect many teaching opportunities, basically, to come through at the MA level. But in terms of research, the main one that we've had that fits the bill of your question is actually the FAO program, the Foreign Area Officers program that's run by Professor Joanna Spear. This basically teaches US military folks who are going to go off and do non-military things in terms of diplomacy and security assistance stuff. It teaches them sort of regional and area studies expertise. And often the FAO program will be looking for people who have got specific linguistic or other skills that they can use for translating local sources and that type of stuff. But again, like we've said before, those things would pop up on a sort of ad hoc basis. There's no sort of planned or sort of coherent regular flow of those types of stuff. It just depends what areas are relatively hot and cold. But if you've got, what was it, Ukrainian and Russian, I doubt anything of interest is happening there in the world of international security. So you're probably out of luck. But, you know, it should be good.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple minutes before 7 o'clock, and I do want to make sure that we end on time. So I just want to give each of our panelists a chance to give any kind of final comments or final thoughts that you might have about why the Elliott School might be the right fit for our admitted students, or you want to plug a class you're teaching this fall, or if there's anything else that you want to comment on. I just want to leave this space for you all to do that. So Dr. Kim, do you want to start?
Sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Nicole. So, you know, I think summer is a good time to prepare for school, but also at the same time, I think, you know, before coming to school, you should just relax and enjoy as well. So do, you know, whatever that, you know, whatever interests you over the summer, and try to read as much as possible that interests you on, you know, international affairs. For Asian Studies program, I don't, for students who have language abilities, I think, you know, that's also another, it gives you additional opportunities to work with professors, especially, you know, those of, for those who are looking for, again, I'm getting back to research opportunities, but I'm just trying to share, you know, as much information as possible, because we Asian Studies programs faculty members, a lot of times we look for student assistants, research assistants who, you know, who's able to read different languages. So again, there's that opportunity. So yeah, for me, I just want to, you know, say just enjoy and be ready for school in the fall. Hopefully we'll be able to see you guys on campus, not online, but if it happens online as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Dr. Saurabh, do you like to give any comments?
Sure. I think the question was, what are some of the major selling points of the Elliott School? Why should students want to choose us? And actually, when you asked the question, I was reminded of my bio that you read, Nicole, that was sort of rattling off all of the schools and all the institutions that I've been associated with in my in a relatively short time period. But what I wanted to say with respect to that is, Working at the Elliott School, I have never worked with a faculty that is so open-minded, so flexible, and so passionate about what they do. I mean, the faculty here are, first of all, subject matter experts. They have a real passion for what it is that they want, that they're doing, and that passion is contagious, right? That's something that just sort of drips from, everything that they do, every action that they take. So it kind of also makes it easier for me in my job, sort of converting these classes online, because that passion, just is something that translates not only sort of in a face-to-face format, but it's able to be picked up even online. So that's something that was a huge selling point for me in sort of landing in the Elliott School and considering it to be my academic home, is that I've never worked with such a faculty, and I think it's a great opportunity for students as well.
Thank you. Dr. Williams?
Okay, so for me, I mean, in the world of security that I work in, you've got to think long and hard, I think, about not going to Washington, D.C. If you want to work in at least certainly the US national security community, then I think, yeah, you've got to start here. And you're lucky, there's a whole bunch of good programs, obviously not just the Elliott School, but there's a half a dozen other good universities offering really good security programs. My advice to you is really do your homework. And what I would encourage you to think about here is that most of those programs, us, Georgetown, American, SAIS, they'll all look roughly similar when it comes to teaching the core issues about, in our case, international security. And they're all good programs. You can find good professors. In my area, I know all the other professors around here. They're not necessarily better or worse than me. They just study different things. And that's the key point. Do your homework and find out where the programs start to look a bit different. And they will start to look a bit different once you get out from the sort of core first year classes and into the more niche and specialist areas. And then the best thing you can do for yourself is obviously find the university that has got a cluster of faculty that work on your region or your issue and that you can engage with in the sort of extracurricular ways that we've talked about already. So that would be my main advice. I think we do a good job at what we offer here. If it's right for you, find that out, and then we'll see you maybe in the fall.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Dr. Foster?
Hi. Yes, I come here. Incredible colleagues. You will not believe where these people have been. They've been everywhere. In my case, I've been at Purdue, Vanderbilt, Cornell, Oxford, Harvard, and this is the place to be, right here in DC. There's so much going on, in particular in the area I'm interested in international development. I mean, it's just everywhere in the city. Being a few blocks away from the World Bank, the IMF, State Department, down the way at USAID, Commerce, Treasury, it's all here. I won't say anything more. Thank you.
All right.
I misunderstood your question. But anyways,
No, that's great.
I said something, but just one thing. I mean, in addition to what all others have said about, advantages of coming to the Elliott School, maybe perhaps, thinking not just about your first year, but maybe, having a broader scheme of like what you want to accomplish, for the 2 years. So for example, we have such a great study abroad program. So, I think that's also something that, you would like to take advantage while you're here. So, think about when you would like to go abroad to do a semester study. So that's also kind of, plan ahead of not just your first year, but just have a broad picture of what you would like to accomplish when you get here.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. A virtual applause to you all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you to all of our admitted students for joining us this evening. As I mentioned, this recording will be up on our admitted student webpage, and we'll also send this out to participants tonight. But thank you so much all for joining us this evening, and we hope to see you all this fall. All right. Have a good night, everyone.